Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Your Career Day, where we try to expose you to careers that you may or may not have heard about. Today, we are focusing on marketing management, and our guest is Mr. Jimmy Friday. Our interviewer tonight is H. H, please take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Career Day. And a special welcome to our guest, Mr. Jimmy Friday. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Very happy to be with you all today.
Well, we're happy to have you too. I have some questions I'd like to ask you, if that's all right.
Please do. Let's go.
All right. So could you tell us who Jimmy Friday is?
Who is Jimmy Friday? That's a great question. So Jimmy Friday is a constant work in progress. That includes both professionally and personally. There's always room for improvement. There's always new things to learn, again, both professionally and personally. So as you can probably see where this conversation is going to go, or at least where I'd like to take it is, there are many aspects to an individual, and they all have an impact on who you are as a person in building your complete and total well-rounded self.
Well, I'm glad you phrased it like that, because that leads to my next question. You spoke about the things that you go through that help build you into who you are. So I guess I wanted to know, or we'd like to know, what was the most profound event in your life that shaped you into the man that you are today?
I would say that event was probably, I'd have to say it's my parents, and in partnership with, several adults in my life. When I think back, being a little kid and, thinking about my room, for example, I never had a lot of posters around my room. My role models were inside the house, inside the family, friends of family. So I was very fortunate. And I think that's probably if you want to categorize it as events, it was my interactions with those role models that probably had the biggest impact on who I am now.
And what led you to marketing?
That was not a direct path. That is a great question. So, going back to when you asked the question of who is Jimmy Friday, constant work in progress, I did not take a direct path to marketing. I actually, from a professional standpoint, once I graduated from high school, I went away to school, wanted to get as far away from Houston as possible, went to the University of Notre Dame, and I started out, my initial major was computer engineering. And then halfway into the first semester of my junior year, I switched it to the College of Business Management Information Systems. And for the first 17 years of my career, I was a consultant. I did technology consulting, management consulting, focusing a lot on the technical, tools and processes. And then that evolved into architecture, designing not just one little system, but the entire ecosystem, the technical ecosystem for some organizations, working with, moving data here and there, transforming data. So my undergrad provided that foundation, and then the technology consulting gave me the real world technology expertise, which continued to evolve into processes, strategy, and I landed in a marketing operations function. So, put a little asterisk by marketing, because marketing is not just the glamorous stuff that you see at halftime at the Super Bowl, the commercials. That's a part of it, it's also all over the internet, social media, but there's also a lot of enablement. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of technology that sits behind that. And that's where I landed. And that's how I landed in marketing operations, was having, the technology undergrad as well as the technology experience in consulting.
You mentioned that there's a lot of behind the scenes activities and things that go into the production of whatever marketing goal you have. I guess the question I would have for you is, what could you share with us that we would not consider when looking at the end product of what you've created on the back end?
There's a lot of, let's just call it homework and preparation that goes into how a company markets to a person. At the end of the day, just think of marketing as, regardless of whether it's with a company or who you're selling to, you are always marketing to a person, right? Whether you're a company that sells directly to consumers or whether you're a company that sells to other companies, you still have to market to a person. And I think, and there's a lot of homework and preparation and analysis and turning the crank that goes into how a company tries to interact with you. So what I mean by that homework and that preparation is, there's the data that sits behind it. There's a number of different tools that sit behind it. There's a number of processes that need to be turned on to flip the switch. And there's a number of people behind it, and it all requires kind of an overarching plan or strategy in order to do that.
Okay, thank you for that. What are some of the things a person, say a young person or a person who's thinking about pursuing a degree in marketing, what are some of the things they should consider with regard to education, job search, and then job acquirement?
I'd say the biggest thing is critical thinking and the ability to solve problems. There are so many people that I've, when I look back on the 25 years of my professional career, very seldom have I run across anyone that has done the same thing the entire time, right? They may have had a completely different undergrad major. They may have started out in a completely different career. I know people that have started out as consultants and now they're physicians. I know people that started out as sociologists and now they're marketers. I know people that started out as psychologists and now they do change management, right? So I would say the common denominator and the reason why people pursue post high school education, right, albeit a 4-year university, a junior college, a trade school, whatever that is to solve problems. So I would say that that's the biggest attribute that students should pursue is don't be afraid to ask why. Be infinitely curious. I was fortunate enough to be invited back to my old high school a couple of weeks ago. One of the things that I talked to them about a lot was what you're doing now. Be infinitely curious. Don't be afraid to ask why. Right? When somebody tells you something at face value, don't be afraid to get under the hood and say, why is that the way that it is? Or help me understand how I can apply this later.
Are there any better paths than other paths to pursue? Or is just getting a general degree and then maybe focusing on marketing later the better path to take?
I would say for marketing specifically, you cannot get away from technology. The latest shiny new toy is AI, right? Like everybody is doing Chat GPT and Meta has their new AI technology, and all of the big tech companies have their new technology AI platforms, and the technology that sits behind it. So, foundationally, the being able to understand data, you don't have to be a data guru, but being able to understand what it takes to help you to identify problems, assess the current situation, and figure out solutions. If there's any opportunity to understand how that interacts with AI, for example, that's data. When an individual starts learning about the various business processes, how those processes interact with data, how in the future they may be leveraged by AI to automate those processes or to enable those processes. I'd say especially in marketing, you cannot get away from technology, whether you're somebody that sits on the front end greeting somebody at a marketing event or a campaign, or you're that person on the back end that's actually supporting those people. The technology nowadays is everywhere, and it does not hurt to dig in to understand how that technology interacts with data and the processes that are related to it.
I know you spoke about AI and data, but I was wondering if you could, for our younger viewers, make the connection to how important understanding technology, and that is to the real world, say living a life that's sustainable, that you can support yourself. Because in my background's in education, people always say, oh yeah, everybody knows how to work the internet, even the teenagers do. But the reality is people tend to learn technology for what works best for them without learning it on the larger scale. So for instance, they'll learn it for social media and simple communication, when the real application is learning other areas that would translate in helping you further yourself in the career. So I was wondering if you could kind of bridge the gap with that explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good analogy is a tool. So if you think of a toolbox, right, you've got a number of different tools in that toolbox. And depending on the profession, a plumber has different tools than an electrician. An electrician has different tools than a carpenter, right? So those are the specializations. But then even within each of the unique specializations, if there is a new tool, they still have to know how to use the tool. They still have to be trained on how to use the tool in order to get the job done. Or if they don't have the right tools, they can't do the job. So technology is exactly the same. Technology is an enabler in order to complete a job, right? So I think, and I think that there's a couple of different layers to it, right? So at the bottom you've got let's start at the top, right? So at the top you've got a process, right? Let's just say that process is a if we're talking about marketing, that process at the top, it may be a marketing event. And in order to enable that event, there's a number of things that need to happen. There needs to be a marketing strategy. That strategy needs to be transformed into a plan. That plan gets transformed into a series of steps to actually get ready and prepare for that event. And then one layer down, you've got, so we talked about strategy and plan, and then we talk about actually getting ready for the event. There's a number of different tools and processes that are needed in order to enable a company to get ready for that event. Because when people start showing up at the event, you've got, let's say, some of the larger events can have tens of thousands of people, right? You want to know who came, right? You want to know who they are. That's data, right? You want to know how to contact them. You want their email address, their phone, but that's all data, right? When they come to the event, you want to know what they did at the event, right? If they attended the general plenary session, if they what are the different booths, the different product booths that they went to, did they go to some different demonstrations? That's also data. And then you a company, should I say, can use that data to try and better understand what that potential customer is interested in. And that's what requires the tool sets, right? So that it's not just the data, right? So, Jimmy Friday showed up at an event, and but it's not just Jimmy Friday that showed up at an event. He showed up at an event and he did all of these different things, right? So based on all of these different things that he did, we should probably have somebody to call him about product X, Y, and Z, right? That requires some data analysis. There are tools that enable that data analysis. There are that requires, again, we were talking about AI. There are AI algorithms that analyze all of that data and try and do some sort of prediction of what a person or prospect might be interested in 2 years down the road, right? So those are all different tools that need to be leveraged in order to better understand what somebody is doing, and all of that is enabled by those steps that took place to get ready for that specific thing.
And to wrap it up, do you have any parting words you would like to offer to anybody saying watching this video, or that you can kind of encourage with your words, or your sentiment, or just way that you lived your life and are demonstrating that to others? Or is there anything in parting that you would like to share with them?
Breathe. Just breathe. Like you sometimes just breathing can change a perspective, right? So, and what I mean by that is, people are very passionate people. And a lot of times when people tend to get caught up in the reaction, whether that reaction is fear, whether that reaction is anger, whether that reaction is anxiety, whether that reaction is elation, on the other side of that reaction is happiness. I think taking a step back and breathing, someone can always benefit from taking a step back and breathing. And the reason why I say that is one of the sayings that one of my old coaches used to say is, things are never as good or as bad as they seem, but somewhere in between reality lies, right? And just stop and realize that, and just breathe. Don't get caught up in the reaction, and that will, it just by just breathing, it gives you a little bit of separation from the current situation, in order to to respond how you should respond or not respond.